All right, what's up, guys? Sorry I couldn't be there today. I am taking care of a sick daughter again. Just wanted to walk through again the end of yesterday's lesson. We talked about parallel lines. We're going to hit perpendicular lines and talk about equations of perpendicular bisectors today. All right, and then I'll be back tomorrow. We'll finish up with our notes on dilations and then keep going from there. So, the first thing we're going to talk about today is slopes of parallel lines. So remember we talked about in class that lines are parallel when they don't intersect, and in order for that to happen, the rise over the run from one point to the next has to be the same. So they have equal slopes. So that's important. What they don't have is they don't have the same y-intercepts. So they have the same slope but different y-intercepts. So that's important. All right. And then vertical lines are going to be parallel if they have different x-intercepts. Okay. So when we look at the equation of these two lines, notice that they both have a slope of 1/2, but their y-intercepts are not the same. So when we look at the equation of a line that we know is going to be parallel, all that we're going to care about is what's the slope of that line. All right, so let's look at number 9a here. What is the equation of a line that passes through the given point? So this point they're giving us is on our line, and it has to be parallel to the equation that's given. All right. So this tells us, number one, that if the point is on the line, we're going to treat that point like x1, right? x1, y1 in our point slope formula, okay? The other thing is that if it's parallel to the line, they're going to have the same slope. So whatever the slope of that line is, our slope is going to be the same as that, okay? So when I look at this first equation, you can see the slope of this line is what's right in front of the x here, which is 2/3. So that is going to be my slope, okay? And it has the point 12,5. So this is going to be our x1, y1 in our point slope form. So once again, we're going to go y minus y1 equals the slope m times x minus x1. We're going to plug in the 2/3 for m, okay? And we're going to plug the 12 and the 5 in for y and x respectively. So 5 for y1, so y minus 5 equals 2/3, and then it's going to be x minus 12. And then if we needed to get it in y equals mx plus b form, remember we would just distribute through. So we'll switch colors here so we can see it there. So distribute through. So we're going to get y minus 5 is equal to 2/3 x. And then really 2/3 times 12 is 2 times 12, which is 24, divided by 3, so that's -8. Okay. And then we would add 5 to both sides and get our y equals mx plus b equation here. Y equals 2/3 x minus 3. So these would be the two answers that we would expect to see on like a multiple choice question that could possibly show up. However, both are acceptable for part 2 constructed response questions. So keep in mind how we're just applying our point slope form, okay? Now, for question B, okay, same concept, except now I don't know the slope yet because I don't have this in y equals mx plus b form. So we would want to just add the 6 to both sides, add the 6x, I should say. And remember, it's y equals mx plus b, right? So we always want to try to put the mx term first. So we're going to say 2y is equal to 6x and then plus 4. And then we just need to get rid of the 2 here. So we'll divide everything by 2. So we have our slope the same. And now it's 3x plus 2. So now we can see that our slope is 3. And we have our point, which is our x1, y1. And so we can just do our point slope form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. You don't have to write this every time, but I'm going to, just so that we can remember what it was. And then we're plugging in the 3 and the 1. So y minus 3 equals 3 times x minus 1. And that's it. That's as far as we need to take it. Okay. Now, the reason is because it just says find the equation of the line. It doesn't say what form. So we can just use any form we want. All right. So how do we handle this question where we have a line given on a graph and a point? So first of all, we want to know what the coordinates of the point are. So that point has the coordinates of -1, -1, which is important. And how do we determine the slope? Well, remember we talked about slope is rise over run. So if I just pick 2 points and I want to pick whole number coordinates here, okay, on the graph, we say we can pick this point and the next one that crosses through whole numbers would be this one. So how do we move from this first point to the second point? Well, we have to go up 2, so plus 2, and then over 1 to the right. That's a plus 1. So our slope, okay, is going to turn into rise of 2 and a run of 1. So our slope is just 2, or 2 over 1. We have our point, so now we're going to go ahead and write our point slope form and then just plug in. So y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. All right, we're going to plug in. This is supposed to be y minus -1. So remember, that's going to turn into a plus. So y plus 1. The slope is 2, parentheses. And it's another x minus -1. So that's just going to be 2 times x plus 1. Okay, so we got our double negatives, which become positives, and then we're just cleaning this up. Now remember, this is an optional step to write this. If you remember that the signs are just going to change, you can just write your final answer, and then we'll be all set. Okay? We're just going to hit with the equal here, too. I just want to make sure this is cleaned up a little bit. All right, and that's it. That's parallel lines. Okay? So perpendicular lines, how do we know the lines are perpendicular? Remember, that tells us that the lines are going to cross and they're going to form 90-degree angles. Now, on a graph, it's really hard to tell that I have 90-degree angles. I don't have like a compass or a protractor. So what we have to do is realize that the slope of this first line is up 1 over 2, that's a half, and the slope of the second line, right, is down 2, right, 1, that's -2. So what we're going to notice is the slope of the first line is 1/2. The second line is -2 over 1. How are these two numbers related? Well, they are what's called opposite reciprocals, or negative reciprocals. So it means in order to figure out the slope of two perpendicular lines, okay, that has to look like the same kind of number, except the fraction is flipped over and the sign has been changed. So for example, if the first slope is 3, okay, this is really 3 over 1. So the opposite or negative reciprocal would be negative and then flip the fraction 1/3. Okay. If we had negative 2/3 or even like 2 over -3, it wouldn't matter. This is a negative fraction. We need to have a positive fraction, and then we're going to flip our fraction. So it's positive 3 over 2. So whether this was -2 over 3, 2 over -3, okay, or negative of 2/3, the negative reciprocal is still just positive 3 over 2. As long as one of these numbers is negative, this fraction needs to become positive to be an opposite reciprocal. And the last one is, let's just say we have a over b, right? What's the opposite or negative reciprocal of that? Good. Hopefully you guys wrote down negative b over a. All right, that's it. Okay, so same thing. If I look at my graph and it has a slope of 1/2, then I know that the perpendicular bisector has to have a slope of -2, right? Flip it over, change the sign, -2 over 1. All right, and then we can write down, okay, what our equation is, just like we did for the parallel lines. Okay, so let's go to the first one. Once again, we have a line that passes through the given point, so that's our x1, y1, okay? And it's going to be perpendicular, so remember, we're going to think that this is the negative or opposite reciprocal. Okay, reciprocal slope. All right, so let's take a look at the first one. Y equals 1/3 x minus 1. So our slope is going to be the opposite reciprocal here. Okay, so if this is 1/3, now one thing I like to do kind of is write m with the little perpendicular symbol to let me know that this is the slope currently. This is what I want it to become. Flip the fraction over so it's 3 over 1, and then change the sign so it's -3. And then once again, we have our x1, y1 here. And so now we can just go ahead and state our equation. So y minus y1 equals the slope, right? The perpendicular slope, though, be careful there, times x minus x1. And so our final answer is going to be y minus 4 equals -1. I almost did it. -3 over 1, not 1/3. And then x minus 2. Okay, just like last time, this one is not solved for y, so we're going to have to do that first. So go ahead and try that one on your own here and see what you get. All right, hopefully we subtracted 2 from both sides, divided by 2 to get y equals negative 1/2. Or sorry, positive 1/2 x. Remember, it's 1 over 2x, so 1/2 is the coefficient, x, and then minus 1. So that slope that we see here is a half, which means the perpendicular slope has to be, hopefully you're seeing it's a negative 2 over 1 or negative 2. We have our point, so we have our x1 and y1. And now we can go ahead and write our equation. Y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. Let's see what we got. Y minus 3 equals the slope, which is negative 2, times x, and it's supposed to be negative here, but we plug it in, it's going to change the sign, so it's going to be x plus 2. Awesome. Okay, let's see if you can handle this one on your own here. Okay, so starting with the first one, we're going to go ahead and use our rise over run here to figure out that we're going to go up 2 and over 1 to the right again. So that means the slope of that line is 2 over 1, and that our slope, the perpendicular one, has to be the negative reciprocal, so it's negative 1/2. The other thing we need is the coordinates of the point. You can read it. We're going 2 to the right and then down 3, so that's going to be 2, negative 3. And then we can go ahead and use our point slope form and plug in. So it's going to be y like minus negative 3, so y plus 3. Then our perpendicular slope of negative 1/2, and then x minus 2. Good. Hopefully that got you cut up here. All right, the last thing on here is classifying lines. So remember, we want to determine if these two equations are either parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So remember, parallel, remember that means they have to have the same slope, okay? Perpendicular is our opposite. We're going to write OPP. Reciprocal. And keep in mind, for both of these, they have to have different y-intercepts. It can't be the same y-intercept. And neither is really just anything else. All right? So we'll put a little asterisk here, all right, to make sure we note that they have to have different y-intercepts. In other words, the equations can't be the same. They can't be the same equation. Okay, if they have the same slope and the same y-intercept, then it's not going to work. All right, and opposite reciprocal is just opposite reciprocal slopes. I don't think the y-intercepts necessarily matter. They actually can be the same. So really, it's just opposite reciprocal slope. Because if the lines aren't going to be overlapping if they don't have the same slope. So it's just this one that can't have the same y-intercept. All right, let's take a look at the first equation. So number one, we can see the slope of the first line here on the right is just 4/5. What are you going to get for the slope of the next one over here? Go ahead and try that one. All right. Hopefully you see you can just divide by 4 and get y equals negative 5 over 4x and then plus 3, but it doesn't really matter about the plus 3 because it's different. Okay, and we can see that this slope and this slope are opposite reciprocals, so these lines are perpendicular. So we're going to write perpendicular, and then we're going to write our reason, since the slopes are opposite reciprocals. All right, we take a look at letter B. Got the same thing here. We can see the slope of the first line is just 3 over 4. Okay, so you can go find, pause it, you can go find the slope of the next line. Okay, so hopefully we just subtracted 4x from both sides here, and then divided everything by that negative 3 that's in front. Okay, so negative 4x plus 9, and then we divide everything by 3 to end up with a final answer of, not m equals, apologies there, but y equals, and then negative 4/3 x plus 3. So once again, our original slope is 3/4. This is negative 4. Oh, I see we did something wrong. You guys see we divided by negative 3 and we forgot the negative here. Oh ho ho. So careful. This should be positive 4/3 and negative 3 here. So 4/3 x minus 3. So now we can see we have the slope of 3/4. That's 4/3. These are reciprocals, but not opposite or negative reciprocals. So this is going to be neither. Okay. All right, and then we can say y. So since the slopes are not, all right, the same or opposite or negative, your choice, reciprocals. All right, and that's it. Okay, so for homework tonight, what I'd like you guys to do is you were supposed to finish 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, and 11 yesterday. So if you finish these first four, what I'd like you to do is finish up with these other ones here. Okay, and the other thing we're going to talk about here, we're going to we'll go through to this one, is the warm up. So let's see if you can handle this warm up real quick. Okay, so what's the slope of the line? Hopefully you like the line. Remember, it's y equals mx plus b. So go ahead and try that now. All right, and hopefully you wrote down 2. Slope of the line parallel to the given line. Good, that's also 2. And what about the equation that's going through the point and parallel to the line? So let's see if you can write out that one. All right, good. So hopefully you wrote down y minus 6. Okay, remember y minus y1 equals that slope 2, and x minus negative 3, which is going to be x plus 3. All right. Okay, letter D. What if we want it to be perpendicular to the given line? So remember, if the slope was originally 2, right, the opposite reciprocal, the perpendicular slope, is going to be negative 1 over 2. So we make it a fraction, 2 over 1, flip it and change the sign. So equation of the line through the point and perpendicular to the line is just like this one, except we're going to swap out that slope. So y minus 6 equals, instead of 2, it's negative 1/2, and then x plus 3. All right, great job. Okay, so skills that we're going to need for this next part of the lesson, okay, are going to be find the midpoint and then be able to identify the slope that's perpendicular and passes through the point. So remember, key thing we talked about midpoint was that it was the average, okay? So it's the average of the x's and the average of the y's. All right, so the formula is x, remember average is add x2 plus x1 and then divide by 2. And each of these x's and y's is going to get divided by 2, okay? So that it becomes the average, and it's written as a point. That's also important, okay? So remember we talked about when we see x2, that means the second point, so that would be B here, okay? And then the x coordinate, so this would be the second point y coordinate. 3 is the first point x coordinate, and negative 8 is the first point y coordinate. So we plug into our equation, okay? We're going to get x2, second point x coordinate is 9, plus the first point x coordinate is 3, comma, and then the same thing with the y's. So 2 plus negative 8, second x, versus plus timeout. Oh, we got some mistakes going on here, guys. Did you catch it? Were you yelling at me earlier? Like, what are you doing? Right? It's 9 x2 plus x1 is 3, but it was correct. And then 2 is y2 plus negative 8. I feel like we were doing that correctly, and I just thought maybe I was doing it wrong. We're all right. We're all right. Okay, let's keep going here. So just double check. X's, Y's, good to go. Okay, so 9 plus 3 is 12, divided by 2 is 6. And 2 plus negative 8 is negative 6, divided by 2 is negative 3. And so that is going to be our midpoint. So the second thing we're going to do is we're going to write the equation of the line that's perpendicular to this line, but passes through this point. So this is a separate question here, okay? So remember, the first thing we need to do is figure out the slope. So the slope of this line is 2, but remember it's perpendicular. So the perpendicular slope is the opposite reciprocal, okay? So 2 flipped, 2 over 1, would be 1 over 2, but negative. And then our point is the point x1, y1, okay? So we're going to go ahead and plug in. So we have our y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1, and then we plug it. So y minus negative 4 becomes plus 4. We change that sign, is equal to negative 1/2. And then change the sign here. So if it's positive, it's just going to be negative, and x minus 10. Okay, so this is all we're doing for perpendicular bisectors here. Step 1, find the slope between the two given points. Step 2, determine what the slope should be if it's perpendicular to those points. Okay, step 3, we're going to find the midpoint. And then we're going to get rid of this part here. We're going to fix this. Okay, step 4, because we're not using the slope-intercept form, we're just going to say plug the perpendicular slope and the midpoint into the point slope formula. All right, and we'll write that formula down one more time. We've written it about 100 times. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. All right, so let's try this one to get together. I'll have you guys try this one on your own here, okay? So we're going to go ahead and do our first things first. Number 1, we're going to find the slope. So remember our formula, m equals y2, it's rise over run, minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, and then we're going to plug in. So y2, second point y coordinate, that's 8, minus y1, first point y coordinate is 2, over x2, second point x coordinate is negative 2, minus x1 is the first point y x coordinate, which is 1. And then we're going to do the math. 8 minus 2 is 6, negative 2 minus 1 is negative 3. And so our slope that we're going to get is just negative 2. Now that also means that the perpendicular slope is the opposite reciprocal of this. So change the sign from negative to positive and flip it, and it becomes positive 1/2. Okay? Step 2, we're going to find the midpoint. Okay, so remember, midpoint is the average, so add and divide by 2. Both the x's and the y's. Add and divide by 2. Okay? That's a 2 here. Okay, let's try it. So x2, second point x is negative 2, plus the first x, which is 1, over 2. And then y2 is 8, plus y1, which is 2, and then divided by 2. So this is going to be our negative 1 over 2, which is negative 1/2. And this is 10 over 2, which is 5. And then we're just going to plug in to our point slope form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Okay, let's try it. So y minus, the y coordinate is 5. So y minus 5 equals the slope, which we said, remember, the perpendicular slope is positive 1/2. Be careful we don't copy down the actual slope. We want the perpendicular one. And then it's x minus negative, so that's plus 1/2. And there's our answer. Okay? All right, I'd like you guys to try B here. You don't have to try C, just try B, okay? And then homework tonight, I just want you to finish the rest of the homework on pages 6 and 7. So finish everything on pages 6 and 7 up through 13 for homework tonight, okay? So as soon as we're done the video, you guys can start it. But I want you to try question B real quick first. Ready? Set. All right, give it a try. All right, if you need to, go back up here. You can take a look at our first example we did and see if that helps you out in completing letter B. Okay. There we go. All right, so step 1, right? Find the slope. So remember y2, so negative 4 minus y1, which is 4, is equal to the slope. Sorry, is equal to x2, so 3 minus negative 5. And so we're going to end up getting negative 8 over positive 8 here, because the plus minus the negative becomes a positive, which is equal to negative 1. And then keep in mind the opposite reciprocal of negative 1 over 1 is positive 1 over 1, or just 1. Okay? So the opposite reciprocal of negative 1 is just positive 1. Second thing we need is the midpoint. So remember, it's x2 plus x1, so that's 3 plus negative 5. and then y2 plus y1, which is going to be negative 4 plus 4, and we're going to end up getting negative 2 over 2, which is negative 1, and 0 over 2, which is 0. And then the last step, we're going to plug into our point slope form. So we're plugging our midpoint and the perpendicular slope here, 1, to end up with a final answer of y minus 0 equals 1 times x minus 1. Now, technically, we could just write this as y, and this could just be x minus 1. So it could be okay to actually simplify it into that y equals mx plus b form. Okay? All right, that's it for today. So all we're doing once again is going back and finishing pages 6 and 7 for homework tonight. Okay? All these lovely questions. You should have already started this, so just finishing it up. All right, remember, you don't have to graph, you just have to look at the equations and see what happens to the slopes. Are they going to be negative or positive as you're working through here? All right, that's it for me, guys. Have yourself a great rest of the day, and we'll see you tomorrow.